I still remember the exact second the world I thought I knew shattered. It was Christmas night. The tree lights were glowing soft gold, the smell of roasted turkey filled the house, and my 8-year-old son, Ethan, sat beside me in his little red sweater, eyes bright with the kind of hope only children carry on Christmas. We had driven 3 hours through falling snow just to be with my parents. I wanted him to feel family. I wanted him to believe he belonged. I was wrong. My mother set her glass down with a sharp click. My father wouldn't look at me. Then the words came cold, final, and spoken right in front of my child. Leave and never return. Ethan froze. His small hand tightened around mine. I stared at them, waiting for the joke, the smile, the "we didn't mean it." Nothing came. Only silence and the soft crackle of the fireplace that suddenly felt like it was burning everything I loved. I stood up slowly, pulled Ethan's coat over his shoulders and walked out into the freezing night with nothing but a half-packed bag and a broken heart. Snow was already covering the driveway. My parents watched from the window. They didn't open the door. They didn't call after us. That night I slept in my car with Ethan curled against my side, his head on my lap, whispering, "Mommy, why don't they love us anymore?" I had no answer. But what I didn't know that day was that the people who threw us out into the cold would one day sit in complete silence because of what followed. My name is Claire. This is the story of the Christmas that destroyed me and the quiet justice that came after. For years I had tried so hard to be the daughter they wanted. After Ethan's father walked away when I was 6 months pregnant, I worked double shifts, took night classes, and still showed up to every family dinner with a smile. I never asked for money, I never caused scenes. I just wanted my parents to look at my son the way grandparents are supposed to look at a child. Instead, they treated him like a mistake. They favoured my younger sister, the one who married the right kind of man, the one who never needed help, the one whose children always received the biggest gifts under the tree. Ethan got leftover toys and polite distance. I got the same. The real reason they threw us out that Christmas night came out in pieces later. My father had decided the family home and the savings would go only to my sister. I was the burden. Ethan was the reminder of my poor choices. When I asked gently if they could help with Ethan's medical bills after a scary asthma attack earlier that month, something in my mother snapped. She called me ungrateful. She said I was trying to take what didn't belong to me. My father simply nodded and delivered the sentence that still echoes in my bones: leave and never return. That night in the car, while Ethan finally fell asleep, I cried without sound. The kind of crying that feels like your chest is splitting open. I kept replaying every Christmas, every birthday, every time I had made excuses for them. The shame was heavy. The loneliness was heavier, but somewhere between the tears and the freezing air, something shifted. I looked at my sleeping boy, his soft breathing, the way his fingers still clutched the edge of my coat, and I made a quiet promise. I would not let their rejection define us. I would not let bitterness raise my child. I would build something better, even if I had to start from nothing. The next months were the hardest of my life. We lived in a tiny one-room apartment above a bakery. I took every extra shift I could find. Ethan learned to help fold laundry and set the table without complaint. At night, I read him stories about brave people who kept going when the world turned cold. I never spoke badly about his grandparents. I simply stopped waiting for them to change. Slowly, things began to turn. A kind manager at work noticed how hard I pushed myself and offered me a better position. I started a small online side business selling handmade Christmas ornaments, the same kind my mother once taught me to make when I was a girl. People loved them. Orders grew. For the first time in years, I could buy Ethan new shoes without calculating every dollar twice. Still, the wound stayed. Every December, the memory of that night returned like a ghost. I wondered if they ever thought of us. I wondered if they felt any regret. I didn't plan revenge. I simply kept living. 2 years later, everything came full circle on another Christmas night. Ethan was 10. Our little apartment had become a warm home filled with lights we bought ourselves. My ornament business had grown into a real shop. We were happy in the quiet way that feels earned. That evening the phone rang. It was my sister, voice shaking. Our father had suffered a serious heart attack. The doctors weren't sure he would make it through the night. My mother was alone at the hospital and somehow they wanted me there. I almost said no. The old pain rose up fast. Then I looked at Ethan, who was carefully hanging the last ornament on our tree, and I remembered the promise I made in the car that freezing night. I would raise him with more kindness than we had been shown. So I went. When I walked into the hospital room, my mother looked smaller than I remembered. My father lay still, machines beeping softly around him. My sister stood in the corner, unable to meet my eyes. No one spoke at first. The silence was thick. Then my mother did something I never expected. She reached for my hand and whispered, "We were wrong." My father opened his eyes. He looked at me, then at Ethan, who had quietly followed me in, and the weight of years seemed to press down on him. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Tears slipped down his face instead. My mother began to cry too, not the sharp, angry tears I had known, but the broken kind. They had spent 2 years watching the family fall apart without us. My sister's marriage had grown cold. The big house felt empty. The savings they once guarded so tightly no longer mattered when the people they loved were gone. And the story of how they threw a mother and child out into the snow on Christmas night had somehow reached relatives and old friends. The quiet judgment had followed them. No dramatic confrontation, no raised voices, just the truth sitting in the room with us. I didn't demand apologies. I didn't list every hurt. I simply sat beside the bed, held my father's hand for a moment, and let Ethan place a small handmade ornament on the hospital table, a little wooden star we had made together. My parents looked at that star, then at us, and the silence that followed was different. It was the silence of people who finally understood what they had lost. We left the hospital that night without grand promises or forced reunions. Some wounds take longer to heal than a single conversation. But as Ethan and I drove home through the quiet streets, the weight I had carried for so long felt lighter. I had not destroyed them. Life had simply shown them the cost of their choice, and I had chosen every single day to build something better for my son. The greatest revenge was never the silence that fell over them. It was the peace that settled over us. If someone you love has ever closed the door on you when you needed them most, hear this: their rejection does not write the end of your story. You do. Keep going. Keep loving the people who stay. And one day, the same people who tried to erase you may find themselves sitting in the quiet, finally understanding what they threw away.